I was about 9 years old when this happened. My parents had been separated for a couple of years by then, but things in my life had never really been peaceful. Not before this, certainly not after. To really understand how terrifying this experience was, you're going to need a little bit of background. Growing up, we were always poor, like just scraping by poor. At one point, my parents were trying to rebuild a house in one of the roughest neighborhoods in our city, a spot that was completely overrun with drugs and crime. It wasn't ideal, but it was all they could afford, so it was either that or be on the streets. The house itself was never finished. It had half-built rooms, bare brick walls streaked with water damage and mold, along with piles of construction materials scattered just about everywhere. The place felt like it could fall in on itself at any moment. It actually sort of mirrored everything else in our lives. On top of all that, my dad was violent, unfaithful, and barely around. When he was, you best bet you could hear him yelling at both me and my mother. Well, one night, pretty much out of nowhere, my mom woke me up after my dad had passed out. She threw a jacket over me and said we had to leave. I didn't ask any questions. I don't know what I would have asked at that point in my life, but we just left. We ended up living with relatives in another city for about 2 years before we moved back. Once we did, we found a small place to live, somewhere my dad didn't know about, at least not at first. But it didn't take long before he started asking around town, trying to figure out where we'd landed. And eventually, he found the answer. Now, here's the thing. Even after everything, I still wanted to see my dad. I was young, and even bad parents can seem like heroes when you're a kid. I missed him, so I begged my mom to let me visit. After some legal back and forth, the court eventually granted him visitation rights every other weekend. For a while, that was the routine. He was living with a girlfriend in that same half-built house, and I'd stay there on weekends. My younger brother, who was 3 years younger than me, lived there too. He was a result of an affair my dad had with this girlfriend while he was still with my mom. All that stuff, though, didn't matter to me. That was adult stuff. Me and my little bro were really close. We used to turn that broken down place into our own playground, using the empty lots around it, the busted furniture, bottle caps, and leftover bricks to form our own little adventureland. Looking back on it, I think our imaginations were the only thing that saved us from realizing just how bleak that place really was. My dad always liked to talk big. He'd say things like he was going to win my mom back, or that I had to make sure no other man ever got close to her. I didn't know what to think about that. Part of me still wanted that fairy tale ending with some picture-perfect family reunion, although I think I knew better. That wasn't going to happen. My dad barely took care of me while I was there with him. Most of the time, I spent with my brother or his girlfriend, while he came and went like he pleased. I think even at that young age, I knew my dad didn't want to care for anyone except for himself. Well, one weekend, things were starting to wind down. It was almost time for him to take me back home to my mom. But instead of sticking to the usual plan, he suddenly barked at his girlfriend and my brother to leave the house. I think this sort of surprised her, since she tried to argue, but he shouted until she backed down and eventually left, dragging my brother with her. That's when my dad told me that we were going somewhere else. We ended up walking down the steep hill that the house sat on, and ended up at a woman's house that I'd never seen before. My dad acted casual, introduced us like it was no big deal, said that I'd be staying with this woman for a little while. Now that was strange enough, but before I could think to ask anything, the woman smiled warmly, disappeared into her kitchen, and came back with a big glass of chocolate milk, which at that time was my favorite. I drank it without hesitating, but within minutes, everything started to blur. I got so tired that I could barely keep my eyes open. Then I assumed that I fell asleep. Once I came to, I was back at my dad's house, but the entire scene was chaos. My mom was there, crying, screaming, completely hysterical. My dad stood in front of her, panicking and pleading, repeating the same line over and over. Don't do this. Don't do this. I think I heard that line 10, maybe 20 times before my mom scooped me up like I was still a toddler and carried me outside. It was clearly late. The streets were all empty, but she kept going. She carried me all the way to a bus stop where we waited for what I believe was the last bus of the night to take us home. I didn't fully understand what had happened until years later. My father had kidnapped me. Instead of bringing me back like he was supposed to, he took me to another woman's house who happened to be one of his mistresses and advised her to drug me. He then left and showed up alone at the meeting spot, told my mom she'd never see me again unless she agreed to take him back. Then he left her there with no answers and no way to find her son. My mom completely lost it. She ran to his house, screaming for him, but he wasn't there. So she waited on his doorstep. Once he finally came back, she didn't beg, she didn't cry. She looked him straight in the eye and threatened to go to the cops if he didn't take her to me right then and there. To this day, I don't know why she didn't do that immediately, but I don't believe that she was bluffing, and I don't think he thought she was bluffing either. He believed her. She was screaming loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. And I think it took that exact scene to pound into his head what the consequences would be if she didn't get her son back. That's what made him crack. So he went back, got me, and brought me to my mother. I think that's when I woke up. That's when I saw her shaking, crying, and somehow still strong enough to carry me right out of that nightmare. I think about that night more often than I'd like to admit. About the alternate reality where my dad's plan actually worked. About how he made me vanish just to coerce my mother back into a relationship with him. But then I'm snapped back to reality, and I think about how even in the face of something truly horrifying, my mom didn't flinch. She just came for me. After that night, and for many years to come, I stopped seeing my dad as anything to me, certainly not a hero. That spot, reserved all for my mom. I can't discount the bravery that it took for her to flash on my dad the way that she did. And I'm truly grateful for the lengths that she went through just to get me back. I was about 25 years old when this happened. At the time, I was working at this small coffee and dessert shop tucked away in a quiet corner of our city. It wasn't the kind of place that got much foot traffic. Honestly, half the time people didn't even realize it was there. So when I worked early shifts, it was just me alone for the first few hours until the lunch crowd slowly trickled in. One morning, a man walked in by himself, and right away I recognized him. He had been there just the night before with what looked like his family, a wife, 2 adult kids. At least that's who I think they were. That was the only time I'd ever seen him before this, and nothing really stood out then. But now, seeing him alone and this early in the day, he had a pronounced vibe about him. He approached the counter, started talking to me right away. Just casual small talk at first, in addition to making his order. Usual stuff, like how quiet the place was. Did I have any favorite desserts? The weather. All typical things, but every second or third topic, he would circle back to how young I looked. He kept repeating that I didn't look a day over 18, which made me uncomfortable, especially after the 3rd or 4th time hearing it. That's when he started talking about how he could help me out. He said that he had a job connect and could get me hired at a place where I'd make $7 more an hour than what I was making now. At first, I was kind of intrigued. I mean, who wouldn't be? I was barely getting by, and any chance to bump up my income sounded good to me. So I asked him the obvious. What's the name of the company? Where is it? But instead of giving me a straight answer, he'd just smile and move on to another subject. Kept rambling about how he knew the hiring manager, how they'd love me, how I wouldn't even need to apply, just show up and I'd be good to go. Already a slightly odd conversation, But it only got weirder when he started talking about his personal life. Unprompted and basically out of nowhere, he told me he cheats on his wife regularly. Like, just flat out said it. Like we were old friends or something. Said she knew about it and was fine with it. Then he launched into this whole story about a 19-year-old girl that he'd had an affair with, and how now she's married and apparently still thanks him for all that he taught her. I didn't even know how to respond to this. I remember trying to smile politely, all the while internally screaming for this man to just go away. While this was happening, a car drove by outside and someone waved at him through the glass door. He waved back and told me that he knew everyone in the area. It felt like he was trying to flex or prove something to me, but the whole thing just made me feel slimy. Like he was trying really hard to make himself seem connected or trustworthy, but all it did was make him seem more shady. The entire time, he kept pushing this job thing. Said I should follow him after work, and he'd take me to the place and get me in. I told him I couldn't because my car was in the shop and my sister would be picking me up. He kept pushing though, asking me again and again. Finally, just to get him to leave me alone, I told him, sure, figuring if he thought I was going to go with him, he'd stop pressuring me. But that's when the goalpost moved. Suddenly, he was saying I didn't need to drive myself. Just hop in his car and ride with him. He said the place would hire me on the spot if I showed up with him. He made it sound like some golden opportunity, but at this point, the hair on the back of my neck was standing straight up. I wanted to get this man his coffee as quickly as I possibly could. That way, he'd disappear. But that's when he pulls out this wrinkled white sheet of paper from his pocket and says it's his license to carry. Again, completely unprompted. He just shows it to me, gives me that line, and then says nothing else. As if that was supposed to make me feel safe or something, when in actuality, it had the opposite effect. Finally, after more and more of this bizarre back and forth, he finally told me the name of the company. He mumbled it quickly as I handed him his drink, and then he left, saying that he'd be back around the time I got off work. The second he walked out that door, I rushed to the back with my phone and started Googling. I looked up the company, the name that he gave me, the location that he mentioned, and I found nothing. No record of the business, no building in that area, not even a listing for something remotely similar. It just didn't exist. I told my sister everything when she showed up. She parked alongside of the building so he wouldn't see us right away. But sure enough, as we pulled around to leave, there he was sitting in a car across the street from the cafe. It looked like he was waiting for me. Funny enough, I never saw him again after that. I was actually retelling the story recently to a friend, and honestly started feeling this deep pit of regret. I never reported this. Other than mentioning it to my sister, I didn't tell anyone officially. Not my boss, and certainly not the police. At the time, I didn't really process it properly. You see, I have a history of dissociation from things. This is due to some trauma that happened earlier in my life. It tends to make me slower to react in moments where I probably should have done something. Looking back at it, even though I was 25, I was pretty naive, more like 18 or 19 in terms of how I understood the world. And now I keep wondering what might have happened if I had gotten in that car that day. Or worse, what did happen to someone else who said yes? It still lingers with me a little, that I didn't say anything, and that maybe someone else wasn't so lucky. Okay, so this is hands down the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. Just a heads up, English isn't my first language. I'm from the French Caribbean. So if some of the scuba diving terms aren't exactly right, just know that I'm doing my best. This happened last year between Christmas and New Year's. Where I live, it's pretty normal to go scuba diving during the holidays since it's warm year-round. My family and I booked a few dives. They're all pretty experienced divers, way more advanced than me. They've passed several higher-level certifications that allow them to go on deeper and more technical dives. I love diving too, but I don't feel confident enough yet to go without an instructor. especially if the dive requires decompression stops. Quick explanation for anyone who's not familiar with scuba diving. Once you go past a certain depth, around 20 meters or 65 feet, you can't just swim straight back up. You have to stop during the ascent to let your body adjust to the pressure, or you risk getting decompression sickness. It's dangerous and can even be fatal in some cases. So the plan was for me to do a refresher dive with an instructor before joining the more complex dives with my family. On the first day, while they were off doing one of those deeper dives, I stayed on the boat with my instructor for a more casual reef dive. There were a few other beginners on board, and I was definitely the most experienced out of them, even if I was still rusty. The instructor decided to group me with one of the new students, figuring I could handle myself well enough. After a quick safety briefing and a review of hand signals, we started the dive. It was beautiful out there. Lots of coral, great visibility. I was feeling more and more comfortable each minute, swimming back and forth between the instructor and the other student. The only issue was that it was a pretty windy day, which caused some heavy swell. Not a gigantic problem underwater, but it meant I was using up my air a bit faster than usual. I signaled to my instructor that my air level was starting to run low. Not dangerously so, but just something to keep in mind. He gave me the thumbs up, meaning he understood. That's when things took a turn. A man that I didn't recognize swam up to me. Full gear, seemed like he knew what he was doing. But I hadn't seen him on the boat. Still, I figured maybe I just missed him earlier. And that's when he signaled to me that he was out of air. Now, in scuba diving, when someone gives you the out of air signal, there's no time to hesitate. You hand them your backup regulator, sometimes called the octopus, and let them breathe from your tank until things are under control. That's exactly what I did. He took my spare regulator and started breathing from it. Once he seemed calm, I gestured that we should head over to my instructor, but he shook his head and motioned for us to ascend right away. And I mean, technically, it made sense. I was low on air, and if he really had no air at all, surfacing was urgent. But I didn't like the way that he was acting. It would have taken 30 seconds to alert the instructor and have him guide us up safely. But the guy kept insisting we go up, and now I was starting to get nervous. By this point, my instructor had noticed, and he was now swimming towards us. That's when this guy suddenly let go of the regulator and swam off, still using his own breathing device. I was completely thrown off. Why would someone pretend to be out of air, use mine, and then just swim away like that? Back on the surface, I was so seasick and disoriented from the waves that I didn't even bring it up right away. But later, on the boat ride back, I finally asked my instructor if he knew what that was about. He just shrugged and said maybe the guy got separated from his own group and needed a moment to calm down. When I said, okay, but why did he signal that he was out of air? The instructor told me I must have misunderstood. But I didn't buy that. I know what the out of air signal looks like. But whatever. I let it go. The next day, I was diving again. This time with a different instructor, a woman named Charlie. I felt a lot more at ease, and eventually I told her the whole story and asked if she knew the guy. I described him, and she smiled and said, "Oh, that's just Marvin. He's training to become an instructor. When he has a day off from the restaurant he works at, we drop him off at the reef in the morning and pick him up in the afternoon. Don't worry though, he's harmless." That made me feel a bit better. I figured maybe we just had a misunderstanding, like my initial instructor had intimated. The rest of the week was amazing. I did more challenging dives, started feeling more confident in myself, and I didn't see Marvin again. That is, until New Year's Eve. We had planned our final dive of the trip that day, a shipwreck, deep enough to require decompression stops. I felt ready for it. No on-duty instructor this time, just me and my family, although my first day instructor was going to be diving too, so I felt even more secure knowing he'd be around if anything happened. About halfway through the dive, while I was hovering near the wreck, Marvin appeared again. He swam straight up to me and signaled, yet again, that he was out of air. This time, I hesitated for just a second. I didn't trust him, but I couldn't ignore it in case he really was in trouble. So, yet again, I gave him my backup regulator. He started breathing from it. Then he grabbed my arm. I reached out to check his air gauge, but he just pushed my hand away before signaling for us to ascend together. But I couldn't do that. I had already been down long enough that I needed to do a decompression stop. I signed no and pointed to my dive computer to show him. That didn't give him pause. He just kept tugging me upward. At that point, I saw my dad below us, but he didn't react. He probably thought that it was my old instructor with me. My dive computer was now flashing and vibrating, warning me that it was time to start my stop. If I didn't, I knew that I'd be risking serious injury, or worse. That's when it hit me. If I let this man drag me to the surface, I could die. I panicked. I started wriggling and writhing, doing everything I could to try to get free. I couldn't scream because, just like in space, no one can hear you underwater. But eventually, my dad noticed what was happening. He swam up fast, grabbed my leg, and yanked me back down. In the process of this, I elbowed the guy, and he finally let go before swimming off. My dad and I did a long decompression stop before surfacing. I was shaking and crying when we got back to the boat. I spilled everything to my dad. At first, he thought it had been my instructor, and there was some sort of miscommunication, but when I explained, he realized that that wasn't the case. We waited for the guy to resurface so we could point him out, but he never did. The next day, we popped into the dive shop one last time because my little sisters had certificates to pick up. Charlie was there. I told her what had happened, and she immediately looked concerned. That's when she said something that gave me the chills. Marvin didn't dive yesterday. He was at the restaurant all day. He waited on me and my family. So, it wasn't Marvin down there. I still don't know who that man was then, or what he wanted for that matter. But he almost got me twice. Once by pretending to be in trouble, and the second time, I truly believe that he had bad intentions. To that diver, I hate that you made me second guess something so basic, so vital. Because of you, I'm not sure I'll ever trust that out of air sign again. And that's not just scary, that's dangerous. This is my first post here, so please be patient with me. I've been debating whether or not I should share my story. So far, the latter is won out. But as I've grown older, I've been reflecting on this moment, and I'm curious about what your thoughts are. This happened about 7 or so years ago. My family and I visited a lake in a state far away from our own for our first and last family reunion. Spoiler alert, it did not go well. Safe to say that the lack of AC during the hot summer month of July, different conflicting personalities, and 3 families in a single Airbnb caused a lot of tension, and it all blew up on the 4th of July. After midnight, my mom got fed up and took me, a 10-year-old female and sick at the time, with her to stay at a hotel. My brother and my dad stayed at the house since they were enjoying themselves and already comfortable for the night. We flew to the state, so we didn't have a car, and even if we did, it most likely would have been blocked in by other family members' cars. After much squabbling about our means of transportation, my grandparents, who happened to live in the same state as us, let my mom drive their car to go stay at an air-conditioned hotel away from the family drama. So my mom and I take off. We drove through the dark, empty streets of this small town for a while before we came across a familiar chain motel that we recognized. Since it was late and my mom had a sick kid in the car, she settled on staying there for the night. Pulling into this circular driveway, we saw a little bit of movement beneath the trees of an island in the middle of the asphalt. As my mom pulled into a parking spot, a man dressed in all camo, smoking a cigarette, emerged from the shadows of the island, and once we got out of the car, he asked, "Are y'all going to be needing a room?" To which my mom responded, "Yeah, because why else would we be at a motel?" It was a little odd that this man, who I assumed to be an employee, was wearing full camo, hat, pants, shirt, and not a uniform of some sort. We ended up walking into the little lobby, which was really just a small room with a computer, a front desk, and a few armchairs. He walked behind the desk, clacking away on the computer as my mom described the room we would like. A queen bed in a non-smoking room. The man nodded, commenting, "Are you two alone?" And I can't remember if my mom responded, but he handed us a key to the room. Not a key card like I was used to at home, but a literal keychain. I thought it was odd, but then I figured maybe it was just a regional difference. This town doesn't get as much traffic as the other popular cities around it, so maybe they don't have the budget or the need for key cards. While I'm trying to work through the key situation in my head, this man is trying to make small talk, asking about what we were doing here, how we were liking the fireworks, things like that, before he then led us to our room on the first floor. Okay, that's not too bad, right? But then he opened our door and led us into the room while showing us around. The moment he opened the room up, the sickening stench of smoke hit us, even though we specifically asked for a non-smoking room. He started twisting the knob to the air conditioning, turning on the bathroom light, and opening the closet door showing us where everything was. This was a tiny room, big enough for one bed, a thin closet in the wall, and two little nightstands, so the tour was 100% unnecessary. My mom stood outside of the room, arms crossed, almost on guard. I, being exhausted, stepped into the room holding my stuffy and blanket, ready to knock out and go to bed. As the man walked into the bathroom, my mom finally spoke up. "Hey, come here." Her tone was stern, one that sounded like that quintessential mom warning that a lot of kids get when they're in trouble. But this one had a little edge to it. The man came back out and was milling around the room when she repeated herself under her breath. I eventually gave in and went to go see what she wanted. She grabbed me the second I crossed the threshold and moved me behind her. We walked back to the lobby to find a new room that was truly non-smoking, and my mom made sure to stay between us every step of the way. While in the lobby, he made a comment that broke the camel's back. "You two are, sure a long way from home," as he rang us up, holding onto my mom's credit card as she looked at her phone. Even though I was young, this comment made my stomach twist, and I didn't really understand why. Suddenly, the lobby filled with ringing, the tune of my mom's ringtone echoing off the walls. "Oh, 1 minute. It's my husband," she said to the man while holding up a finger to me as I prodded her. The conversation went something like this. "Mom, hello? Hi, honey. What was that?" Me. "Mom, who is it? Why is Dad calling?" Mom. "Shh. Oh, are you with Ben? We found a place." "Oh, okay, yeah, I guess we'll see you there. Got it. Love you." Like the annoying kid I was practically tugging at my mom's sleeve, asking her where my brother Ben and Dad were. Mom shushed me again, gesturing for me to grab her card as she informed the man that my husband and kid are down the road. They already checked into a room, so we're just going to go meet them. I'm still asking her about what was going on since I was confused. As we made our way back to the car, I flooded her with questions, and she simply just looked forward, all the while clasping my hand. I hopped in the back seat and we backed out, quickly leaving the driveway. And in a nearly cinematic moment, my mom turns to me, finally answering my questions in the most jaw-dropping manner for 10-year-old me. I lied. Whoa. Why? Now, I had always been taught about stranger danger and kidnappers, but this was different territory for me, one that most women have to live through every waking moment. She filled me in as we drove, winding through the roads back into town. While I was busy thinking about falling into a smoky and dingy bed, my mom was in full-on panic mode. Her mom instincts flared up the moment he opened our door for us, most likely trying to rationalize what was going on. Once we got inside the room, easily accessed on the bottom floor with a key that no doubt this guy had a spare of, and one that didn't meet our specifications, she came up with a plan. While we made our way back to the lobby, blabbing about a new room, she had been texting my dad, telling him where we were and to call her. Their conversation actually went like this. "Hello? Hi, honey. Are you okay? What's going on?" "Oh, are you with Ben? We found a place." "Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll see you there. Got it. Love you."
Huh?
Cue utter confusion for my dad. My mom's worries were only further confirmed with the man's strange and overly personal questions. The reality of the situation began to set in for me. A little part of me that was still innocent and naive to the ways of the world began to crack. In the end, we found a safer hotel further into town. This one had a pool, and we stayed there for the rest of our trip, later joined by my dad and brother. Now, on to the update that freaked me out even more. My brother and I recently revisited the town with our grandparents for a quick family trip, and we stayed at a house on the same lake where we had the reunion. On our way to the house, our car passed the charred remains of a building, gates and caution tape surrounding the entire area. My grandma pointed it out and informed me that that was the motel my mom and I had almost stayed at. It burned down in October of 2023. Now, I've scoured the internet for the hows and the whys and any sort of answer as to what happened at this motel, but so far, I haven't been able to find any. The name of the place did change from when we first went, but I was still able to find it with relative ease. Let me know if you want to know the name of the place in the comments. I feel like the fact that it mysteriously burned down only adds to the unsettling experience my mom and I had there. After looking back at this moment with older and much more experienced eyes, I'm very, very glad that my mom got us out of there. She has not, that I can remember, had a sort of feeling like that one since, and I've gained even more admiration for her. I'll never know what would have happened if we stayed at that motel that night, because thanks to my mom's intuition, we avoided that situation entirely.